Y'all come on in now. Pull up a chair and get comfortable. The fire's warm and the night is long, just right for a story. Some stories live in books. Others get passed down, whispered through the years, like wind moving through the trees. But the best ones never die. They just wait for someone to listen. The night was still, wrapped in deep December cold. Snow lay quiet across the hills, blanketing the valley, piling against split rail fences and cabin rooftops. The creek, half frozen, whispered softly beneath thin layers of ice, winding its way down a mountain like a silver ribbon. Above it all, the stars burned bright, so clear, so countless, they seemed close enough to touch. Inside the little cabin at the edge of the hollow, a lantern flickered on the wooden table, its glow spilling over the worn pages of an open Bible. The old woman ran her hands across the words, her voice soft as she read. And so it was that while they were there, the days were accomplished that she should be delivered. She paused, her gaze lifting toward the window, watching as the candlelight reflected against the frost-covered glass. The snow had settled deep now, the wind had hushed, and for a moment the whole world seemed to be listening, waiting. Her grandson sat beside the fire, carving a small wooden lamb. He was quiet, thoughtful, his young hands careful as he worked the blade along the grain. "Grandmama," he asked, "what was it like that night?" She looked at him, her weathered hands resting against the open Bible. "The night Jesus was born?" she asked softly. The boy nodded. She smiled, turning her gaze back to the fire, watching as the flames licked slow and steady against the logs. "It must have been a night much like this one," she murmured, "cold and quiet, with the sky full of stars." She could almost see it, the hills of Bethlehem bathed in silver moonlight, the town bustling with travelers, the streets packed full with weary souls looking for rest. And there, at the edge of it all, a stable, not grand, not gilded, but humble, a place for animals, a shelter from the night, and within it, a young mother, weary from her journey, laying her newborn son in a manger filled with straw. The King of Kings, wrapped in swaddling clothes, his first cries filling the quiet of the night. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the wonder of it settle deep. A child, born not in a palace, but in a stable, not to the rich, but to the lowly, not to be served, but to serve, to save. She looked at her grandson, his eyes wide in the firelight. "The world didn't know, not then," she whispered, "but heaven did." The boy set down his carving knife, leaning closer. "The angels knew," he said. She nodded. Oh yes, they knew. She could almost hear it, that great and glorious sound, the rustling of wings, the bright chorus of voices filling the sky, shattering the silence of the hills as the shepherds stood trembling in their fields. "Fear not," the angel had said, "for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. All people, the rich and the poor, the strong and the weary, the broken and the whole. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Savior, which is Christ the Lord." The old woman sighed, her eyes shining as she turned back to her grandson. "That same Savior still lives," she said softly, "and he is still the greatest gift this world has ever known." The boy looked at the small wooden lamb in his hands, running his fingers over the smooth edges. Then, without a word, he stood and walked to the mantel, setting the lamb beside the simple wooden nativity carved by his great-grandfather years before. The fire crackled, filling the room with its gentle warmth. Outside, the wind had stilled, and above the snow-covered hills, the stars burned on, silent, steady, watching over a world still in need of saving. If this story spoke to you, if you felt the echoes of the past in its words, I invite you to stay a little longer. Like this video, subscribe, and join me as we continue weaving stories of history, home, and the hearts that lived before us. Your support keeps these stories alive. Thank you for being here.